always thought being home alone would be a welcome break. No noise, no interruptions, just me and the quiet. But last Friday night, I learned that silence isn't always comforting, can be deafening and horrifying. My parents had gone out of town for the weekend. It wasn't unusual for me to stay behind. At 23, I was more than capable of handling myself. The house was a modest 2-story, tucked away in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Nothing ever happened here. That's what I kept telling myself. The night started uneventfully. I ordered pizza, curled up on the couch, and flipped through Netflix, finally settling on some light comedy to keep things relaxed. Around 10:30 p.m., I turned off the TV, locked the doors, and headed upstairs to my bedroom. That's when I heard it. The first creak came from above me, a single, sharp creak of a floorboard. I froze at the foot of the stairs, my heart hammering in my chest. The upstairs was empty, or at least it should have been. I shook my head, convincing myself it was just the house settling. Old houses make noise, I thought. Nothing to worry about. But as I climbed the stairs, each step felt heavier than the last. I couldn't shake the unease that had settled in my stomach. Once I reached my room, I locked the door behind me. Not something I usually did, but tonight felt off. I crawled into bed, scrolling aimlessly through my phone to distract myself. That's when I heard it again. Creak. This time it was louder, closer. It was the sound of weight shifting on wood, like someone taking a cautious step. My blood ran cold. I muted my phone and held my breath, straining to hear. Creak, creak. The sound was unmistakable now. Someone or something was walking down the hallway. My hallway. I wanted to tell myself it was my imagination, but the footsteps were deliberate, slow, and steady. I reached for my bedside lamp, but stopped. If someone was out there, I didn't want them to know I was awake. The footsteps stopped right outside my bedroom door. I stared at the doorknob, half expecting it to turn. My pulse pounded in my ears, drowning out everything else. For what felt like an eternity, nothing happened. Then came the knock. It wasn't loud, just a soft, deliberate tap. 3 knocks, evenly spaced. I clapped a hand over my mouth to stifle a gasp. I didn't dare move. Hello? A voice called, muffled but distinctly male. I think I'm lost. Lost? In my house? My mind raced. Was this some kind of joke? A home invasion? My phone was still in my hand, but I was too terrified to dial 911. The voice came again, closer this time, as if he was pressing his face to the door. Can you help me? Something about the tone sent chills down my spine. It wasn't desperate or pleading. It was playful, mocking. I stood, my legs shaking, and backed away from the door. That's when I heard it. A scraping sound, like nails dragging down the wood. I know you're in there, the voice sang. Couldn't breathe. My hands fumbled for something, anything I could use as a weapon. My eyes landed on a heavy ceramic lamp on my nightstand. I yanked the cord from the wall and gripped it tightly, my knuckles white. The knocking stopped. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then a loud crash. He was trying to break the door down. I screamed, finally snapping out of my paralysis, and dialed 911. My voice was trembling as I whispered my address, begging them to send help. The operator tried to keep me calm, but I could barely hear her over the sound of the door splintering. And then it stopped. The silence was worse than the noise. I pressed the phone to my ear, gripping the lamp like a lifeline. Ma'am, officers are on their way, the operator assured me. But I wasn't reassured, because I could hear him again. He wasn't outside the door anymore. He was inside the room. The line went dead, and the last thing I heard was his voice, low and mocking, whispering from the darkness. You shouldn't have answered. When the police arrived 15 minutes later, they found me curled up in the corner, clutching the lamp. The door was intact. There was no sign of forced entry, no sign of anyone at all. But I know what I heard. I know what I felt, and I haven't been home alone since. The day had been a typical Friday. I came home late after an exhausting week at work, eager to unwind. My apartment, usually a sanctuary of peace and quiet, suddenly felt unnervingly still. Something seemed off, but I brushed it aside, blaming my fatigue. As I kicked off my shoes and stepped inside, the hallway light flickered ominously before casting the entire corridor into darkness. I fumbled for my phone, using its flashlight to navigate. The unsettling feeling clawed at me, but I told myself it was just the exhaustion playing tricks. I locked the front door and settled into the living room with a cup of tea. The flickering shadows from the fireplace danced on the walls, creating a ghostly ambience. My gaze wandered, and for a split second, I thought I saw a figure standing at the edge of the room. Heart racing, I blinked, and it was gone. Laughing nervously, I chided myself for being so jumpy. Hours passed, and the apartment seemed to grow colder. The usual hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock, all the familiar sounds were absent. It was as if the silence had swallowed them whole. I tried to distract myself by watching TV, but the static on the screen only heightened my unease. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it again, the fleeting shadow. This time, it was closer. I grabbed a kitchen knife, the only weapon I could find, and slowly made my way through the apartment, checking each room. Every door was locked, and the windows were secure. There was no logical explanation for what I was seeing. In my bedroom, I noticed something strange. The closet door was ajar. I distinctly remembered closing it before I left that morning. With trembling hands, I yanked it open, but it was empty. A chill ran down my spine as I heard a whisper behind me. Spinning around, I found nothing but the oppressive silence. Sleep seemed impossible, but my body ached for rest. I lay on my bed, knife clutched tightly, hoping the darkness wouldn't bring more terrors. Around 3 a.m., the temperature dropped drastically. My breath came out in frosty puffs, and the hairs on my neck stood up. The whispering returned, louder this time. Felt like it was surrounding me, echoing off the walls. Suddenly, the whispering stopped, replaced by a soft creaking. I looked towards the bedroom door, which was slowly swinging open. A shadowy figure stood in the doorway, features indistinguishable but eyes glowing with a malevolent light. Paralyzed with fear, I couldn't move as it glided towards me. The closer it got, the heavier the air became, suffocating me. It reached out, cold fingers brushing my skin, and in that moment, I knew I wasn't alone. This presence, whatever it was, had been waiting for me. I blacked out, waking up hours later to the warm rays of the morning sun. The shadow was gone, and everything appeared normal. But I knew better. I could still feel its touch, a lingering reminder that I was never truly alone in my apartment. To this day, I can't explain what happened. I moved out soon after, but the experience haunts me. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I still hear the whispering, a reminder that some shadows are not cast by light but by the darkness that lies within. I always thought being home alone was a blessing. A quiet house meant I could binge watch my favorite shows and snack without interruptions. Last Friday, though, turned into something I'll never forget, something I'll never stop fearing. My wife and son were out of town for the weekend, visiting her parents. I was looking forward to a peaceful night after a long work week. I ordered food, grabbed a beer, and settled into the couch. The house felt unusually quiet, but I chalked it up to my family being away. Around 11 p.m., I heard it, a faint, rhythmic tapping. At first, I thought it was the house settling. It's an older place, creaky and prone to making weird noises. I ignored it, but the tapping continued, irregular yet deliberate, almost like a Morse code I didn't understand. It seemed to be coming from the ceiling. I grabbed a flashlight and climbed onto a chair in the living room, peering up at the air vent. The sound stopped the moment I focused on it. I told myself it was probably just an animal. A raccoon or a squirrel must have gotten into the ductwork. Annoying but not terrifying. Returning to the couch, I tried to push it out of my mind. But an hour later, as I lay in bed scrolling through my phone, I heard it again. This time it wasn't tapping, it was scratching. Slow, deliberate, and much closer to my room. I froze. It was coming from the vent directly above my bed. I turned off my phone light and stared up, heart racing. A shadow flickered behind the vent slats, followed by a low, almost imperceptible exhale. Someone or something was in there. I panicked and grabbed the nearest object I could use as a weapon, my bedside lamp. With trembling hands, I dialed 911 and whispered to the operator about what I was hearing. She asked me to stay on the line and wait for the police, but I couldn't. I had to know. Using the flashlight, I climbed onto the bed and looked up. The vent cover had been shifted slightly, screws loosened. I thought I saw movement behind the slats, a glint of eyes staring back. Then the vent cover fell, crashing onto the bed. A long, pale arm reached through, thin and sinewy like it didn't belong to any human. I screamed and stumbled back, knocking over a chair as I ran out of the room. The sound of something heavy crawling through the ducts echoed above me. I locked myself in the bathroom, heart pounding so loudly it drowned out every other noise. The operator kept telling me to stay calm, that help was on the way, but I barely heard her. Then came the sound that haunts me to this day. A slow, deliberate knock on the bathroom door. 3 knocks. A pause. Then 3 more. I didn't answer. Couldn't. My hands fumbled to mute the phone, afraid the sound would give me away. I crouched in the corner of the bathroom, gripping the lamp as if it could save me. The knocking stopped, but I heard something outside the door. A deep inhale, like someone trying to sniff me out. Finally, I heard sirens. The knocking stopped, and the house fell silent. When the police arrived and broke the bathroom door down, I burst out, nearly hysterical, trying to explain what had happened. They searched the house, finding no signs of forced entry. No one was there, but when one officer checked the vent, his face turned pale. He called me over to see. Inside the duct was a dirty, tattered blanket, a half-eaten sandwich, and a single Polaroid photo of my family. My wife, my son, and me. The photo had been taken from inside the house. To this day, I can't sleep alone in that house. I can't look at the vents without breaking into a cold sweat. Whoever or whatever it was, they knew us. And worst of all, they were watching.